So I did a review of Doomtown Reloaded, and it's an LCG by AEG. There's a lot of initials for you. An LCG by AEG. And the thing about LCGs is whether it be Android Netrunner or Dominion or whatever LCG you're talking about is they're really only as good as their expansions because they're built on the premise that you're going to buy the expansions. And I kind of tried to avoid when I talked about the base set, tried to avoid talking a lot about the expansions because, well, you're buying the base set. So I want to talk a little bit about the expansions because I think some of the stuff they did with the expansions was kind of cool. Now, each of the expansions basically adds a additional set of cards. They'll add a mix of characters, items, locations, and action cards. And each expansion will come as a different set. Now there are two kind of classes of expansions. They have pine boxes, which are small, or saddlebags which are small, and pine boxes, which are large. So the saddle boxes might have 50 or 60 cards in them, and the pine boxes might have 100. I think that's about what they are. Now, what I really think is cool about the Doomtown Reloaded expansions are actually the little inserts here. Now, for some of them, the inserts include new rules. So, like you have Faith and Fear here. Here's one of the Pine Box ones, and it talks about a new rule with respect to cooperating, and then it talks about, here they gave a couple of additional deck suggestions. There's actually some websites out there that are exclusively devoted towards deck building and building your decks for Doomtown Reloaded, which I think is really interesting. I haven't looked at a lot of them, but I've looked at some of them. But what I really like about these expansions, now all of them have the standard poker hand thing on them. I think it's kind of a waste, but they do it because that's such an important piece of the game. They've got an information section here and credits, but it's the stories. I think this is critical, which is that, and really cool, which is that each of the expansions comes with a story about the town of Gomorrah. And you have things like there's Faith and Fear, there's Foul Play, there's Penny Ante, which is about poker. You've got Double Dealin', you've got The Great Debate, which is about an election which is coming up. In fact, I actually got two of The Great Debate. I actually bought two of them. You have Frontier Justice because the characters there are policemen and judges. You've got No Turning Back, Nightmare at Noon, Dirty Deeds, and I think there was one even called Bad Medicine, which is about characters that do kind of mystical, medical kind of stuff, weird science kind of stuff. We have The Curtain Rises, which is about circus performers. You have Immovable Objects, so you have Ghost Town. So each of the expansions has a theme to it and a story behind it. There's Election Day. That's one of the ones that just comes out. I don't know where my Election Day went. But you have Election Day. That's where the election actually happened. So I think that's what kind of, for me, distinguishes this particular expansion, say, versus, say, a Smash Up or Red Dragon Inn expansion. Now, I think those Smash Up and Red Dragon Inn expansions are really good. I'm not putting them down. But the fact that they sat down and took the time to write a story, even if it's a one-pager or a half-a-pager, that ties all the cards together and explains why all these cards are together in the same pack, is really interesting. Now, it's true that Smash Up does that, where you look at some of the Smash Up expansions, like Pretty Princess, Pretty Princess, right, and Munchkin. They do tie together, but I don't think they spend as much time. They kind of presume you know how they're going to tie together, and there's no story behind them, which is fine. You don't really need it for Smash Up. You don't need stories. I think the stories are really cool because Gomorrah and Doomtown really, if once I get better at it, I've only been playing for about 2 months now, really is about storytelling. It's about, I'm kind of thinking about the Wild West stories. When we were talking about this online, about the Wild West stories and setting stuff up and the plotting and scheming, and I can see once I get beyond just the mechanics of occupying buildings and so on and so forth, about the game telling a story, which I think is really neat. So that's kind of something I wanted to add real quick to my review of Doomtown.